All right, so we got this dating advice book excerpt, and looks like someone's looking to navigate those tricky early stages of a potential romantic connection.
Right.
Buckle up, because we are going deep
Okay.
into this playbook on attraction,
Right.
specifically for men.
Okay.
Let's unpack this whole concept of the friend zone.
Yeah.
See what insights we can glean,
Mm.
even if some of the ideas feel a little old school, shall we say.
Yeah. It's interesting how this source frames the friend zone as something men accidentally fall into, almost like a trap.
Yeah.
It definitely presents a very specific perspective.
Yeah. The author claims it's almost always an accident for men.
Right.
It's like they just trip and land in this platonic purgatory with no escape.
Exactly.
But you know what I find fascinating?
With that.
This whole idea of a touch gap they talk about.
Ah, yes, the touch gap.
Yeah.
The idea that physical touch,
Right.
or the lack thereof, can make or break a romantic connection.
Oh, really?
I'm curious to see how they develop that concept.
Well, they use this analogy of a crack in the ground
Okay.
that widens the longer you avoid a physical contact. Eventually, it becomes this chasm you can't cross,
Right.
separating you from any chance of romance.
Wow, that's a pretty vivid image, isn't it?
Right.
It really highlights how crucial they believe physical touch is
Yeah.
in signaling romantic interest.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like a secret code that says, hey, I'm not just interested in being friends.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They even suggest that cultures with more casual physical touch
Right.
might have an advantage when it comes to attraction.
Interesting.
Like, people are already comfortable with that level of physicality, so it's easier to escalate things romantically.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
And it touches upon something we've discussed before,
Yeah.
the influence of cultural norms on our behavior.
Right.
What's considered friendly in one culture might be interpreted as flirty in another.
Right.
This source seems to imply that being comfortable with touch from the get-go
Yeah.
can help avoid those mixed signals.
Makes you wonder if we're all just walking around misinterpreting each other's touch signals all the time.
Right.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty of their touch strategy.
Okay.
They break it down into 3 phases:
Okay.
attraction, rapport,
Oh.
and seduction,
Right.
each with its own playbook for how and where to touch.
Okay, so let's break down those phases.
Yeah.
It sounds like a systematic approach to building physical intimacy,
Right.
but I'm already wondering about the potential pitfalls of being too prescriptive.
You and me both.
Yeah.
I mean, how often do real-life interactions fit neatly into a 3-phase model?
Right.
But let's hear them out.
Okay.
What does the attraction phase entail?
Well, according to the author,
Yeah.
this initial phase is all about light, fleeting touches,
Mm-hmm.
lasting no more than 1 to 3 seconds.
What?
Think like a quick touch on the shoulder
Yeah.
or arm, just enough to spark curiosity without being overwhelming.
So kind of like testing the waters,
Yeah.
dipping your toes in the touch pool before diving headfirst.
Exactly.
Okay.
And they emphasize that these touches should be on less intimate areas,
Okay.
like arms and shoulders.
Gotcha.
It's about subtlety
Mm-hmm.
and creating a sense of intrigue,
Right.
not rushing into anything.
Okay. I'm starting to see how this model could be helpful.
Yeah.
Even if it's a bit simplified.
Sure.
It's like learning the basic steps of a dance before you try to freestyle on the dance floor.
I like that analogy.
Right.
And building on that,
Yeah.
the source then transitions into the rapport phase,
Okay.
where touch starts to linger a bit longer, 4 to 7 seconds,
Okay.
and potentially moves to slightly more intimate areas,
Like what?
like interlocking fingers or a light touch on the small of the back.
So now we're graduating from a quick tap on the shoulder to
Right.
holding hands or a more lingering touch. It sounds like the key here is to gradually escalate the level of physical intimacy
Yes.
as the connection deepens.
Precisely. The author emphasizes that each phase builds on the previous one, mirroring the natural progression
Yeah.
of building trust and intimacy
Right.
in a real-life relationship.
This makes me think about those awkward moments
Uh-oh.
when you misread someone's signals
Oh, yeah.
and go in for a rapport touch when they're still in the attraction phase.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about a recipe for a cringeworthy encounter.
Absolutely. Calibration is key here, and we'll delve deeper into that later.
Yeah.
But it's crucial to acknowledge that this source, while focused on attracting romantic interest,
Right.
does highlight the importance of respecting boundaries
Yes.
and paying attention to the other person's cues.
Which is a good reminder that any physical contact,
Yeah.
regardless of the phase or intention, should always be consensual and respectful.
Absolutely. Consent is paramount.
Yeah.
No means no.
Right.
And a hesitant maybe is also a no.
Good point.
We'll unpack this aspect of consent and boundary setting in more detail later on.
Sounds like a plan. But before we move on,
Yeah.
I'm curious to know what stood out to you in these initial phases
Okay.
of the source's touch strategy.
What struck me is how much emphasis they place on physical touch
Okay.
as a primary indicator of romantic interest.
Hmm.
It makes me wonder if they're overlooking other crucial aspects of attraction. Shared values,
yeah.
intellectual compatibility, and emotional connection.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Physical touch is just one piece of the attraction puzzle.
Right.
It's not the whole picture.
Exactly.
And we definitely need to explore those other elements as well.
Absolutely. So while this source provides some interesting insights into the role of touch,
Right.
let's keep in mind that attraction is a multifaceted dance.
Yes.
And there's a lot more to explore beyond those initial physical interactions.
For sure.
Now, getting back to their touch strategy, it gets even more interesting
Okay.
when the source describes the seduction phase, where touch becomes more intentional
Okay.
and, as they put it,
Yeah.
aggressive.
Aggressive. Whoa, that sounds a little intense.
Yeah.
I'm hoping they clarify what they mean by that.
Right.
Because it definitely raises some red flags.
Yeah.
Consent and respect should always be top of mind no matter what phase you're in.
You're absolutely right to point that out. The use of the word aggressive can be problematic,
Yeah.
especially in a context like this.
For sure.
It's important to remember that any physical escalation should always be consensual and based on mutual desire,
Right.
not on some predetermined playbook.
Agreed. Hopefully they'll provide some much needed nuance on that point.
Right.
But I am curious about what kind of touches they're referring to in this seduction phase.
Well, according to the source,
Okay.
it involves longer touches, moving from one area to another,
Okay.
with the goal of building physical intimacy. Think about a hand lingering on the lower back,
Yeah.
or maybe a gentle caress on the cheek.
Okay. I can see how those kinds of touches could be interpreted as more sensual and
Right.
potentially lead to greater intimacy.
Exactly.
But again, it all comes down to reading the other person's signals
Mhm.
and making sure they're comfortable with the pace of things.
Exactly. And that's where the source's emphasis on calibration comes in.
Okay.
They talk about paying close attention to both verbal and nonverbal cues to gauge the other person's receptiveness.
Okay.
Like if you're in the seduction phase
Yeah.
and the other person tenses up or pulls away,
Right.
it's a clear sign to dial things back.
Right. And maybe even revisit those earlier phases
That's
to
it.
make sure you haven't jumped ahead too quickly.
Yeah,
It's like that old saying, 2 steps forward, 1 step back sometimes.
precisely. It's a dance, not a race.
Right.
And just because you think you're ready for the seduction phase
Right.
doesn't mean the other person is on the same page.
Speaking of reading signals, the source provides a whole list of body language cues to watch for.
Yeah.
They even talk about using your peripheral vision
Interesting.
to check if someone's moving their hands away subtly.
It's almost like they're turning dating into a spy mission, right?
I know.
Use your peripheral vision.
Yeah.
Watch for hand movements.
Right.
Proceed with caution.
It's a bit much.
Yeah.
But on a more serious note, I do think there's value in being attuned to those nonverbal cues,
Sure.
even if we don't need to turn into secret agents.
I agree. Body language can reveal a lot about someone's comfort level.
Right.
Even if they're not explicitly saying, hey, back off.
Yeah.
It's about being respectful and responsive to those subtle signals.
And remember, misreading those signals can lead to some seriously awkward and potentially even harmful situations.
Absolutely. Consent is non-negotiable.
Right.
And that's something we should always emphasize,
Yeah.
regardless of what any dating advice book might suggest.
Well said. So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
From accidental friend zoning to decoding body language and navigating these so-called touch phases.
Right.
What are your overall thoughts on this source's approach?
You know, while their focus on touch is interesting,
Yeah.
I think they're missing a huge piece of the attraction puzzle.
Oh, really?
They barely touch on the importance of things like shared values,
Okay.
intellectual connection, and emotional intimacy.
Right. It's like they're reducing attraction to a purely physical game.
Yeah,
And that feels a bit shallow, don't you think?
I agree.
I mean, sure, touch can be important,
Right.
but it's only part of the story.
Exactly. What about those deep conversations that leave you feeling like you've known someone for a lifetime,
Yeah,
even if you just met?
I know.
Or the shared laughter over an inside joke.
Right.
Those moments build a connection that goes way beyond physical touch.
And what about that feeling of being truly seen and understood by another person?
Yes.
That's powerful stuff.
Right.
And it's not something you can achieve by strategically touching someone's arm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So while this source might offer some insights into the role of touch,
Okay.
let's remember that attraction is a complex interplay of factors,
Right.
and physical touch is just one element in a much larger symphony.
Beautifully put. It's like we've zoomed out and are now seeing the entire orchestra,
Yes.
not just one instrument section.
And by appreciating all those different elements,
Yeah.
we can develop a more nuanced understanding of attraction,
Right.
one that goes beyond a simple touch-based playbook.
You know, this whole conversation has made me think about how much emphasis our culture places on romantic relationships as the ultimate goal.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
It's like we're conditioned to believe
Right.
that if we're not actively pursuing a romantic partner,
Mm-hmm.
we're somehow failing at life.
Right. But what about the value of deep friendships
Yeah,
and platonic connections?
Exactly.
They can be just as fulfilling and meaningful. And sometimes they even evolve into something more over time.
That's a crucial point.
Right.
Reducing relationships to a binary of romantic or not
Mm-hmm.
can undervalue the richness and depth of human connection in all its forms.
Totally. And sometimes those strong friendships
Right.
can even lay the foundation for a truly amazing romantic relationship down the road.
It's like we're back to that idea of not forcing things
Yeah.
and letting connections unfold organically.
Right.
Sometimes the best way to find love
Mm-hmm.
is to focus on building genuine relationships with people,
Yeah.
regardless of the label we attach to them.
I'm really liking where this conversation is going.
Okay,
It's like
man.
we've moved beyond the limitations of this source's perspective
Yes.
and are now exploring a more holistic view of human connection.
I agree. It's about recognizing the value of all kinds of relationships
Yeah.
and appreciating the unique qualities each person brings to our lives.
So while this source provided some food for thought on the role of touch, I think we've uncovered some much richer insights
Yeah,
by expanding the conversation beyond their narrow focus.
absolutely.
Right.
We've delved into the importance of consent,
Right.
the complexity of nonverbal communication,
Mm-hmm.
and the multifaceted nature of attraction.
And we've challenged the idea that romantic relationships are the be-all and end-all,
Yeah.
recognizing the beauty and value of diverse connections. As we've been going through this source's touch strategy,
Mm-hmm.
I've been thinking about how it all comes down to this one question.
Yeah.
How do we create that spark,
Right.
that magnetic pull?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Right.
And while this source seems to suggest that touch holds the key,
Mm-hmm.
I think we've established that it's far more nuanced than that.
Totally. It's not just about mastering some secret handshake
Right.
or decoding body language like a spy.
Exactly.
There's something deeper going on here,
Yeah.
something beyond just technique and strategy.
I couldn't agree more.
Mhm.
It's about authenticity, about letting your true self shine through
Mm-hmm.
and connecting with someone on a level that resonates with both your hearts and minds.
You know, I remember reading the study about the mere exposure effect.
Oh, yeah.
The basic idea is that the more we're exposed to something,
Mhm.
the more familiar and likable it becomes.
That's a fascinating concept.
Right.
And I can definitely see how that applies to attraction as well.
Yeah.
The more time we spend with someone, the
Yeah.
more we discover those little quirks and nuances that make them unique and appealing.
Exactly. It's not about putting on a show or trying to be someone you're not.
Right.
It's about letting those layers unfold naturally,
Mm-hmm.
like peeling back the petals of a flower to reveal its hidden beauty.
And that process of discovery should be a two-way street.
Yeah.
It's about being open to learning about the other person,
Right.
appreciating their perspectives,
Mm,
and finding those points of connection that spark joy and mutual understanding.
I love that. It's
Yeah.
like we're shifting the focus from how do I get this person to like me to how do we create a space where genuine connection can flourish.
That's a much more empowering and authentic approach, don't you think?
Totally.
It's about building a foundation of mutual respect,
Yeah.
shared interests,
Right.
and emotional intimacy.
Absolutely. And sometimes that means letting go of the pressure
Right.
to make something happen
Yeah.
and simply enjoying the journey of getting to know someone new.
It's about embracing the beauty of human connection in all its forms,
Mhm.
whether it blossoms into a passionate romance
Yeah.
or a lifelong friendship.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the friend zone and
Yeah.
the intricacies of attraction,
Right.
I want to leave you with this one final thought to ponder.
Yeah.
Instead of obsessing over techniques and strategies,
Mm-hmm.
what if we focused on cultivating genuine connections with people,
Yeah.
regardless of the label we attach to them?
What a beautiful way to sum things up.
Right.
It's about approaching relationships with an open heart, a curious mind,
Yeah,
and a willingness to let those connections unfold naturally.
exactly. And who knows, by shifting our focus from escaping the friend zone
Right.
to building authentic relationships,
Sure.
we might just discover a whole new world of fulfilling connections that we never even knew existed.
And that, my friend, is the true magic of human connection.
Until next time, happy connecting.